In this video, you'll get the latest update on my gear room build. I'll show you the details on how you can pack and organize your own hunting gear, and you'll get a preview of a couple of the new products we're working on. Welcome to the Red Kettle channel. Here you'll get a view under the bonnet. You can see what products we're working on, and I'll share some ideas and tools for efficient hunting. Let's get to it. Today you'll get an update on my gear room build and tips for how to organize your own hunting gear. So what's the status? I poured a new concrete floor. I stripped the old horse boxes down to the bare structure and used it as a basis for the stud walls. I plasterboarded the outside and two of the inside walls, and I've insulated all the walls. The wiring for electricity is also ready, and I just need the electrician to connect everything when the walls are done. Next step is to plasterboard the two remaining walls and skim them so I can paint. I've got all that planned out. My big question is how I best organize the room and my gear. I've got some general ideas, but I still got question marks on exactly how to implement them. I know I want my workbench in here by the front wall, and I need somewhere to hang clothing, which would probably be the right side wall behind me here. And I need shelves for my gear, probably on the left side wall. The question is what kind of shelving, because I'm trying to save a bit of money. Store-bought shelves are pretty expensive and won't fit perfectly. Plywood has also gotten rather expensive, so I'm looking at options for recycling. I originally saved the old horsebox walls. They're made from 25mm or 1-inch plywood, but I've decided to use them for workbenches on the outside instead. I've got a few other options for sheetwood that might work, but the most important point is this. The shelving unit has to work with different types of gear, different ways of packing gear, sort of short-term versus long-term storage. Some gear I'll use on an almost daily basis, or at least on a weekly basis, and other things will be in storage for months at a time. I keep coming back to that rush and dull concept that I mentioned before, which means managing gear in layers and modular units. Practically speaking, the main layers will be boxes, bags and webbing. Let's talk about that in more detail. I'm constantly looking for better options to store my gear, and I realize there is no single perfect way. It all depends on the situation. There's a big difference between what I need when I pop out the door to hunt on my own small plot of land versus when I have to get in the car to drive somewhere, or if I travel abroad. That's why I've started splitting my gear into modules. I keep most of my clothing separate from my hunting gear, and I set my core hunting gear up for specific scenarios. I use a 6-step process to select and organize gear for a given hunting situation and to optimize the way I use it. I call it DRS, OOS, or Dr. Seuss. I talked about that process in the last video when I mentioned the Epiphany Loop. I'll put a link to that video in the description. And I'll do a more in-depth video on Dr. Seuss at some point. For now, here are the key points. I define the hunting situation I'm preparing for. I map out the process for how I plan to hunt, and I decide what gear I need and how I'll carry and use it. With a clear inventory for that scenario, I can work backwards from there. At that point, I start to include thoughts on logistics, and I consider 3 things: how I travel with the gear, how I pack, and how I store the gear. Here's a simple example. Scenario is a morning or evening out hunting deer. It's autumn, winter season, for the times when I just got to get in my car to get to my hunting ground. So in the box I have a couple of bags, one for clothing and one for gear. But let's focus on the gear for now. In the gear bag, I've got a number of things: my bino caddy and harness with the binoculars, knife, Spartan javelin bipod, and a single pouch for accessories. I've got a separate bag with my butchering equipment, and I've got a pouch with different gloves and hats so I can choose depending on temperature and weather on a specific day I'm hunting. I also keep my belt pouch in there for the times when I plan to stay out more than a few hours. It's got room for a spare layer, and I keep a water bottle in it together with a seat map. This prototype pouch doesn't live in the bag, it lives in my gun cabinet. It's got everything I need to operate my rifle, including bolt, magazine, sound moderator, a few cartridges, a few rounds of ammo, and the barrel key for my blaster. Oh, and a copy of my license. That way I can keep these components separate from my rifle when traveling, and I always just grab them from that gun cabinet, knowing I never forget anything. By the way, this is the latest prototype. I used the first prototype for a couple of years now, and it's worked pretty well. So well that we're working on introducing it as a new product. Probably sometime this year. I'll keep you posted on that. So in summary, I decide what gear I need for a specific scenario. I make sure I organize the gear for using it when out hunting, and I work backwards with bags and boxes to help me transport and store the gear. You don't need a full gear room to organize your gear this way. You can start with a single box, a couple of bags, and a few pouches. In reality, there aren't that many ways to store your gear. To me, the key point is to have a system to help you define what gear you need and how you use it. Organization will come naturally once you've made those decisions. Let me know if you've got any questions or ideas to share. Please like if you did, subscribe and switch on notifications if you'd like to hear more from us. Thanks for watching.